Hello, my name is Sarah Bryant. I am 48 years old, single, and proud of it. For the past 2 decades, I have led a fulfilling life as the president of a thriving company, focusing on my work and personal growth. Marriage was never a priority for me. I cherished my independence too much to risk it on an uncertain relationship. That all changed one fateful day when Matthew Adams, the head of a well-established business and a longtime professional acquaintance, approached me with a proposal. "Sarah, I'd like you to meet my youngest son, Ryan," Matthew said. "He's a good man, kind, thoughtful, and I think you two could be a good match." Out of respect for Matthew, I agreed to meet Ryan. At first, he appeared harmless, a bit awkward, immature perhaps, but polite enough. Over the next few months, we began dating. Though there were small red flags, I brushed them aside. Ryan's charm, though sprinkled with immaturity, began to wear me down. His words were sometimes condescending, but I attributed it to his lack of real-world experience. No one is perfect, I told myself. Perhaps he just needed time and patience to mature. 3 months into our relationship, Ryan proposed. "Let's get engaged," he said with a hopeful smile. "We can grow together, Sarah." I hesitated for a moment, but my heart softened. Maybe, just maybe, this could work. With the engagement set, it was time to meet Ryan's family, a formal introduction to the people who would soon become part of my life. I knew it would be a challenge. After all, a businesswoman in her late 40s doesn't exactly fit the traditional mold of a bride-to-be. I spent hours preparing for the visit, ensuring everything about me reflected class and confidence. My hair was styled to perfection, my clothes carefully chosen, and my demeanor calm and professional. I was ready, or so I thought. The day arrived. Ryan picked me up and drove me to his family's home. His demeanor was unusually quiet, almost nervous, but I chose to overlook it. As we entered the Adams' lavish living room, I smiled warmly and extended my hand to greet his mother, Megan. What happened next was something I could never have anticipated. Megan stood in the center of the room, eyeing me from head to toe with an expression I couldn't quite place, part curiosity, part disdain. The handshake I offered was left hanging in the air, ignored as she folded her arms tightly across her chest. "So, you're Sarah Bryant," she finally said, her tone dripping with condescension. "I've heard a lot about you." "Thank you, Mrs. Adams," I replied politely, refusing to react to her obvious lack of warmth. Ryan stood to the side, his hands buried in his pockets, saying nothing. His silence was noticeable, but I chose to focus on making a good impression. We sat down and Megan began her interrogation almost immediately. "Sarah, Ryan tells me you run a business," she said, forcing a smile. "That's unconventional for a woman, isn't it?" I returned her smile calmly. "It's been my passion for over 2 decades, and I'm proud of what I've accomplished." Her forced grin faltered, replaced by a sneer. "Well, I suppose when one comes from humble beginnings, they have no choice but to work." The implication was clear. I took a deep breath, steadying myself. "Hard work has always been a point of pride for me, Mrs. Adams. It teaches discipline and independence." Megan laughed lightly as though I'd said something amusing. "Independence. Oh, I see." She leaned forward slightly. "But don't you think independence is overrated, especially at your age? Women are meant to create families, not companies." My heart began to pound, but I maintained my composure. I had dealt with tough business negotiations before. This was no different. Ryan, however, remained silent, his gaze fixed on the floor. That silence hurt more than I was willing to admit. Megan continued, her voice growing sharper. "You know, Sarah, Ryan deserves someone who can uphold our family's reputation. People are already talking about this match, wondering what kind of woman doesn't marry until she's pushing 50. I was stunned. Before I could respond, she delivered her final blow. With parents like yours, you'll drag our family name into the dirt. Don't expect us to accept you. The room went silent. My hands tightened into fists at my sides as her words hung heavily in the air. Ryan smirked. Not a word of defense, no attempt to stop his mother. His complicity was louder than her insults. Megan wasn't done. She picked up the steaming cup of coffee in front of her. The smug look on her face was a clear warning. "Consider this your farewell gift," she said, and before I could react, she hurled the coffee straight at me. The cup clattered to the floor as the hot liquid splashed across my face, soaking my clothes and stinging my skin. I gasped, stunned, the shock rendering me momentarily speechless. Ryan's laughter filled the room, sharp, mocking, and cruel. "That's enough." Mr. Adams' voice thundered from across the room, but it was too late. Slowly, I wiped the coffee from my face with the back of my hand. My expensive blouse was ruined, and the humiliation seared deeper than the liquid. But I refused to give Megan or Ryan the satisfaction of seeing me defeated. Calmly, I stood up. "Thank you for showing me exactly what kind of family I was about to marry into," I said, my voice steady and strong. "I'll save you the trouble of dragging your name into the dirt. This engagement is over." Megan's smirk disappeared in an instant. Ryan's laughter cut off abruptly, his face paling. "What?" "Sarah, wait," Ryan stammered, finally finding his voice, but it was far too late. I turned to Mr. Adams. "Thank you for your cooperation in our business dealings over the years, Mr. Adams. I'll have my team contact yours to discuss any next steps." Without another word, I walked out of the room, leaving behind the echoes of their stunned silence. As I walked out of the Adams house, my heels clicked sharply against the marble floor, each step echoing in the quiet hallway. My face and clothes were still damp from the coffee, but I refused to let it break my resolve. I had dealt with far worse challenges in my career. This was just another test of character. Behind me, I could hear Megan's indignant voice rising in protest. "How dare she?" she screeched. "Ryan, go after her. Fix this." But Ryan, true to form, did nothing. His silence was his answer. He would never stand up for me. The drive back was quiet. I sat in the back of the car Ryan had arranged earlier, staring out the window, lost in thought. My reflection in the glass revealed the coffee stains marring my blouse and the slight redness on my cheek from where the liquid had splashed. How did I let it get this far? I wondered, shaking my head at my own lapse in judgment. At first, Ryan had seemed harmless, maybe even endearing. His lack of maturity, his awkward attempts to impress me, I had dismissed them as quirks of a sheltered man. I told myself that patience could fix his flaws and that with time he might grow into a better partner. But the events of today were a wake-up call. As the car approached my home, I replayed the scene in my mind. Megan's cruel insults about my family, Ryan's smirk, his refusal to defend me, the hot coffee dripping down my face. I thought back to the way Megan mocked my parents, belittling their background and implying I was unworthy. My parents may not have been wealthy, but they were good, honest people who raised me with love and integrity. That was more valuable than all the wealth in the world. Ryan's laughter hurt the most. He could have stopped his mother. He could have defended me. Instead, he joined in her cruelty, exposing his true nature. I realized then that this wasn't just about Megan. Ryan was part of the problem, and I could no longer pretend otherwise. "This engagement isn't just over," I said to myself quietly. "It never should have happened in the first place." When I finally stepped into my home, I went straight to my room, peeled off my ruined blouse, and tossed it in the laundry hamper. The mirror reflected a woman who had just walked through fire and come out stronger. I washed my face, removing every last trace of the coffee, and took a deep breath. This wasn't a loss, it was a victory. I had escaped a toxic family and an unworthy partner before it was too late. I sat on my couch with a glass of water and picked up my phone. A message from Ryan blinked on the screen. "Sarah, my mom didn't mean it. Let's talk, please." I stared at the words, shaking my head. There was nothing left to say. With one final tap, I blocked his number. The morning after the disastrous meeting at the Adams house, I arrived at my office with a renewed sense of purpose. My assistant glanced up, noticing the determined expression on my face. "Everything okay, Miss Bryant?" she asked cautiously. "Never better," I replied, setting my bag down. I had a plan to deal with the Adams family, not out of spite, but to ensure they faced the consequences of their actions. As the president of a thriving company, I didn't rise to where I was by letting people walk over me. Megan and Ryan had crossed a line, and it was time they learned what happens when you underestimate the wrong person. I drafted a formal letter to Matthew Adams' company, clear, concise, and professional, stating my decision to reevaluate and temporarily suspend all business contracts. The letter cited increasing concerns over leadership integrity and reliability as the reason. I ensured the wording was airtight, leaving no room for negotiation. Once I signed the letter, I handed it to my assistant. "Have this sent over immediately," I instructed. She nodded, but curiosity flickered in her eyes. "Will this hurt their company?" she asked. "Not intentionally," I replied calmly, "but they need to learn that actions have consequences. I won't partner with anyone I can't trust." That evening, my phone rang. The caller ID read Matthew Adams. I picked up, expecting his call. His voice trembled with desperation. "Sarah, please, you don't understand what you've done. This will destroy us." "I understand perfectly, Mr. Adams," I replied coldly. "I gave your family trust and respect, and in return, I was humiliated. That coffee your wife threw at me wasn't just liquid. It was a symbol of your family's arrogance and entitlement." Matthew stammered, searching for words. "But our company, our employees—" "Your family's actions brought this upon themselves," I said firmly. "I've made my decision. There's nothing more to discuss." I hung up the phone, knowing full well what would happen next. Over the next few weeks, news of Adams Enterprises' collapse spread like wildfire. Investors pulled out, the loss of my company's partnership revealing their deep financial troubles, which led to plummeting investor confidence. Suppliers withdrew support, and with debts piling up, Adams Enterprises struggled to pay suppliers, causing delays and further losses. Employee layoffs began, leaving employees scrambling for jobs. The media began reporting the downfall in brutal headlines. Adams Enterprises on the brink of collapse after losing key partnership. Greed and mismanagement topple a family business empire. Megan and Ryan became the faces of failure. Reporters hounded them, demanding answers. Megan, once so proud and arrogant, now hid from cameras, while Ryan's smug demeanor was replaced with panic. Unable to accept their failure, Megan and Ryan stewed in bitterness in their eyes. I was the villain, the one who had brought down their empire. "They'll pay for this," Megan reportedly told a close friend. "We'll make sure of it." Their desperation grew, and I had no idea what they were planning next. A month after the collapse of Adams Enterprises, I was certain that chapter of my life had closed. My company was thriving, and the Adams family had reaped what they had sown. But just when I thought it was over, the storm returned. It was a quiet Monday morning when Amanda walked into my office, holding a thick envelope with a look of concern on her face. "This came for you, Miss Bryant," she said softly. I frowned, taking the envelope and tearing it open. My stomach sank as I read the first few lines. Plaintiffs Megan Adams and Ryan Adams allege that Sarah Bryant deliberately sabotaged Adams Enterprises, resulting in financial ruin. A lawsuit has been filed demanding compensation for damages. I placed the document on my desk, taking a deep breath to steady myself. "Unbelievable," I muttered. "They're trying to pin their failure on me." Amanda watched me anxiously. "What do you want to do?" I straightened in my chair, my resolve hardening. "Call Evelyn Moore. Tell her I need to see her immediately." By afternoon, I was sitting across from Evelyn Moore, my sharp and dependable lawyer. She scanned the lawsuit, her brow furrowing in irritation. "This is outrageous," she said, tossing the papers onto the table. "They're claiming you intentionally sabotaged their company to ruin them." "They're desperate," I replied calmly. "They can't accept that their failure was their own doing, so they're trying to drag me down with them." Evelyn leaned back, a smirk playing on her lips. "They underestimated us again. We'll not only prove their case is baseless, but we'll expose everything: their lies, their financial fraud, and their incompetence." "What's our strategy?" I asked. "First, we'll file a countersuit for defamation and damages to your reputation. Then we'll gather every piece of evidence to dismantle their case and show the court the truth." I nodded. "Let's do it. I won't let them destroy what I've built." Within days, news of the lawsuit exploded across media outlets. The Addams family, desperate for sympathy, gave interviews, painting themselves as victims of my supposed vengeance. Megan appeared on television, her face carefully composed to appear broken and betrayed. "She wanted to destroy us," Megan sniffled, tears in her voice. "We gave her our trust, and she turned it against us." It was a performance worthy of an award, but I wasn't worried. Behind the scenes, Evelyn and my legal team were gathering evidence, a mountain of undeniable proof that the Addams family's downfall had nothing to do with me. In the weeks leading up to the trial, we uncovered the following: financial fraud records proving that Megan and Ryan had siphoned funds from Addams Enterprises into personal accounts to maintain their lifestyle, evidence of reckless decisions that had put the company into financial ruin long before my partnership ended, and false claims showing my company had fulfilled every obligation in our contract with Addams Enterprises. "This lawsuit is a desperate attempt to deflect blame," Evelyn said during our final strategy meeting. "We'll expose every lie in court." I nodded, feeling a mix of anticipation and resolve. It was time to end this for good. The day of the trial arrived. The courtroom was packed with reporters eagerly waiting to see how the case would unfold. I sat calmly at my table, Evelyn beside me, while Megan and Ryan sat across the room, their faces etched with forced confidence. The proceedings began, and Megan's lawyer stood up to present their case. Sarah Bryant maliciously terminated her partnership with Addams Enterprises, deliberately causing its collapse out of personal spite, he declared. Megan dabbed her eyes with a tissue for dramatic effect while Ryan avoided looking in my direction. Then it was Evelyn's turn. She rose to her feet, her voice sharp and commanding. "Your Honor, the claims made by the plaintiffs are not only false, but deliberately fabricated to deflect blame for their own failures. We will present clear evidence that Addams Enterprises' financial collapse was due to internal fraud and mismanagement, not my client's actions." One by one, Evelyn presented the evidence. bank statements showing funds funneled into Meghan and Ryan's personal accounts, internal emails and records proving poor financial decisions made months before the partnership ended, and my company's records showing I fulfilled every term of our agreement. The courtroom watched as Evelyn systematically dismantled the Addams family's claims. Meghan's confident facade began to crack, and Ryan sat frozen, realizing the truth was laid bare for everyone to see. When Evelyn finished, the judge turned to Meghan and Ryan. "Do you have anything to say in your defense?" Meghan stammered, her voice weak. It wasn't supposed to be like this." Ryan simply looked down, too ashamed to speak. After a brief recess, the judge returned with his ruling. "The evidence clearly shows that the plaintiffs, Meghan Addams and Ryan Addams, filed false claims against the defendant, Sarah Bryant, in an attempt to shift blame for their own failures. The court finds the plaintiffs guilty of defamation, perjury, and corporate fraud." The judge delivered the punishment. Meghan and Ryan were ordered to pay damages to compensate for the harm done to my reputation. Both were sentenced to prison time for fraud and perjury. The courtroom erupted with whispers as Meghan and Ryan were led away. Meghan screamed, "This isn't fair," while Ryan followed silently, his face pale and defeated. As I walked out of the courtroom, the weight that had lingered on my shoulders for weeks finally lifted. The Addams family had been exposed for who they truly were: fraudulent, arrogant, and entitled. Justice had been served, and the world now knew the truth. Evelyn walked beside me, her expression one of quiet triumph. "They underestimated you, Sarah," she said with a smirk. "And look where it got them." I smiled faintly. "They played a dangerous game, and they lost. This was never about revenge. It was about defending what's rightfully mine." News of the trial spread like wildfire. Media outlets published headlines that made the Addams family's downfall unavoidable. Meghan and Ryan Addams exposed for lies, fraud, and humiliation in courtroom drama. Addams Enterprises' final fall. Greed and mismanagement lead to ruin. Meghan Addams began her 3-year sentence for fraud and perjury. Ryan Addams was sentenced to 2 years and spent his days behind bars reflecting on his downfall. The damages awarded to my company wiped out whatever wealth the Addams family had left. Their mansion and assets were seized to pay off debts, leaving Meghan and Ryan with nothing. Meghan, once the picture of arrogance, became a symbol of failure and greed. Ryan was abandoned by the few friends he had left. His name was now synonymous with shame. Matthew Addams, who had stayed out of the courtroom drama, quietly sold off the remnants of Addams Enterprises. He retired in disgrace, leaving behind the empire he had once proudly built. In the weeks following the trial, my company soared to greater heights. The lawsuit had been a test, but it proved my integrity and strength to everyone watching. Clients and business partners praised me for standing up to injustice. My reputation, far from being damaged, emerged stronger than ever. At a celebration dinner held by my team, Amanda raised a toast to Sarah Bryant, our fearless leader. May no one ever doubt her strength again. Laughter and applause filled the room as I smiled, feeling a deep sense of satisfaction. I had stood my ground, and I had won. Months passed, and word trickled in about Meghan and Ryan's lives post-trial. Meghan, once so proud and condescending, was now a forgotten figure. After serving her sentence, she moved into a rundown apartment, abandoned by everyone she had once flaunted her wealth to. Ryan, having lost his cushy life, struggled to adapt to reality. No one wanted to hire a disgraced man convicted of fraud. I never wished harm upon them, but their fate was of their own making. They had tried to destroy me, and instead, they destroyed themselves. One evening, I stood on my balcony with a cup of tea, looking out over the city's skyline. The air was cool, and for the first time in months, I felt peace. True, unshakable peace. This journey had taught me many things. Never compromise your dignity for anyone. Always stand up for yourself, even when the world doubts you. Happiness, I realized, isn't something someone gives you. It's something you build for yourself day by day. I turned my head back inside, my phone buzzing with a new email. A proposal for a partnership from a major international company. Life was moving forward, and I was ready for it. Thank you for watching this story. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to our channel. What would you have done if you were in Sarah's shoes? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to hit the notification bell so you never miss a new story. Until next time, remember, stand tall, fight back, and never let anyone take away your dignity.